Welcome everyone to session 3 in the inter-workshop follow-up webinars. This is for members of the Business Owner Mentoring Group, currently running through the Small Business Centre in Balcata, and for invited guests and other clients of mine. So welcome all, thank you for being on time. Today we're going to be talking about personal productivity. And so let's have a look at what we're going to be covering. So we're going to be talking about big rocks. As I say, we did go through all this in the workshop, but it's always good to get reinforcement, and spaced repetition is a great way to learn. It's the way we learn so many things. So we're going to be talking about the big rocks and understanding what our big rocks are. We're going to be talking about the Quadrant system and unique abilities. We all have some unique abilities, and we'll explain what those are. And the whole thing about personal productivity is it's all about mindset. It's what's going on in that brain up there of ours. And mindset comes from a whole lot of things, from our conditioning, from our DNA, so our personality, and there's a lot of debate and research into how personality is formed. Is it in our DNA or is it in our conditioning? And if you read Martin Seligman's work into what we can change and what we can't, then he comes to the conclusion that it's about 50-50. So some of our personality is built into our DNA, and some of it we learn from our early conditioning in life, and some of our later conditioning as well. So sometimes if you want to change and you want to change habits, then you've got to change some of that conditioning, some of the values that we've built up and some of the attitudes that we've built up over time. So this whole thing really does focus on mindset. So personal productivity. Why do we struggle so much these days with personal productivity? Let me just ask you with a quick poll here. What is your biggest personal productivity challenge? So I'll put this up on the screen, and you can see I'll put a few things in there. You can tick as many of these as you like. So if they're all a challenge for you, tick them all. If there's only one or two, just tick one or two. But what things are challenging you most about your personal productivity and getting things done? So is it not enough hours in the day because you've got way too much work to do? Are you getting too many emails, too many phone calls, too many interruptions, or drop-in visitors? So what is it for you? Okay, so I'm going to close the poll in 3 seconds. So if you haven't pushed any buttons, push them now, and then I'll close it in 3, 2, 1. And let's see what the group says. Let's have a look at the results of that. So 3/4 of you said not enough hours in the day, too much work. 25% are getting too many emails, 25% too many interruptions. Phone calls don't seem to be so much of a problem, or drop-in visitors. So these are all typical things that eat away at our time and stop us doing the things that we should be doing. So let me go back to that little picture that I had before. I think part of the problem is that these days we seem to have to make more decisions. We've got more choices. There's some good research out now on what they call the paradox of choice. You know, at one time it was believed that it was good to give people choices and have lots of choice, and so you could choose the best. But now it's being deemed by research into depression and things like that, and suicides, that actually having too much choice is depressing us. It's not helping us at all. And because we spend a lot of time now trying to make up our minds what to choose because there are so many options, and then when we've made the choice, we have this buyer's remorse type thing where we're not quite sure, we think we could have done better, and so it becomes quite depressing. It's interesting, actually. There's a lot of good articles you can Google on that. The paradox of choice. But we just seem in our business days and our personal lives these days to have more decisions to make. We're trying to juggle a lot more balls than we used to, keep things going, working on a lot more fronts. Our attention is under constant attack. You know, the mobile phone rings, landline phone rings, emails pop up, SMS messages go off, people are contacting us through social media, all manner of things. People are dropping into the office, we're getting mail, there's all these things to deal with, so our attention is constantly under attack. People are seeking to get our attention. And so by the end of the day, we suffer this energy crisis. We are just absolutely exhausted. This is not everyone, of course, but I'm talking generalizations here. So by the end of the day, you can feel really, really tired just because of all those decisions you've had to make. And again, that research into choice and the paradox of choice shows that the less choices we've got and the earlier in the day that we make them, the better the choices we make. Because towards the end of the day, we just don't want to make any more decisions. So I guess the message there is don't try to market or sell to people later in the day. Anyway, these are all the things that come up that are challenging us. So the other thing I talked about in the workshop was the bank story. You know, there's a lot of stuff around about time management and managing your time and things like that, but really we've got to understand, as I said before, it's a mindset thing. You know, that we can't manage time. You can't do anything with time. You can't store it up. You can't save it. You can't find it. You know, try looking in your drawers and your cupboards and find some time. You just can't. It's not possible. So here's the story about the bank. Imagine there is a bank that credits your account each morning with $86,400. It carries over no balance from day to day. Every evening, the bank deletes whatever part of the balance you failed to use during the day. So what would you do? You would draw out every cent, of course, and use it, wouldn't you? Each of us has such a bank. And its name is time. Every morning, it credits you with 86,400 seconds. Every night, it writes off as lost whatever you failed to invest during the day. Each night it burns the remains of the day. If you fail to use the day's deposits, the loss is yours. There is no going back. There's no drawing against tomorrow. You must live in the present on today's deposits. Invest it so as to get from it the utmost in health, happiness and success. The clock is running. Make the most of today. To realize the value of 1 year, ask a student who failed a grade. To realize the value of 1 month, ask a mother who gave birth to a premature baby. To realize the value of 1 week, ask the editor of a weekly newspaper. And to realize the value of 1 day, ask someone who just lost a loved one. To realize the value of 1 hour, ask the lovers who are waiting to meet. To realize the value of 1 minute, ask a person who missed the train. And to realize the value of 1 second, ask a person who just avoided an accident. To realize the value of 1 millisecond, ask the person who won a silver medal in the Olympics. Treasure every moment that you have, and treasure it more because you shared it with someone special, special enough to spend your time with. And remember that time waits for no one. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. And that's why it's called the present. So it's about spending more time in the present and being present and realizing that the only time you can spend and invest is the time right now, the present. So don't waste it. That will be available on the Business Mentoring Group Trello for everyone to download a copy if they so wish. So let's have a look at, I said it was a mindset about what you do with your time. So one of the things that we talked about in the session, we watched a video of Stephen Covey doing a little exercise with a participant in a seminar. and it's called the Big Rocks exercise or the Big Rocks principle. And Stephen covers the one on the left, by the way. So in the session, Stephen gets a volunteer up out of the audience, puts a bucket of green gravel on the table and a whole lot of big rocks, with the big rocks labelled parts of life like important clients, getting in a tender, health and well-being, family, all those sort of things. They're the big rocks. And he asks the participant to put all the big rocks into the jar on top of the gravel. But all the big rocks have to fit in so that you can run your hand across the top of the jar and there's nothing sticking over the top. So the participant struggles for quite a little while, putting rocks in, taking rocks out, and as she's taking rocks out, Stephen will say, oh, look, she's taken out health. Oh, look, she's taken out family. She's taken out important client, and so on. And so, of course, it doesn't take too long for the participant to realize that it's impossible to get everything into the jar as it is. So at that point, Stephen stops it and gives her another opportunity. He says, let's take a different approach. And now he gives her the empty jar. He gives her a jar full of the gravel and the big rocks and asks her to start again. So now that she's starting from scratch, it's a whole different ball game, because she's realized by now what she needs to do is put the big rocks into the jar first, and now she can get all the big rocks in, so all those important parts of life and business, and then she can tip the gravel into the jar, and then by shaking and twisting the jar, the gravel slides down into all the gaps between the big rocks, and slowly she's able to get all the gravel into the jar as well. So now she's filled the jar and got everything in by taking a completely different paradigm, a completely different mindset, a different approach to how she did the exercise. In some videos I've seen Stephen at this point, when it's full up and the audience clap and cheer, and he says, so the jar's now full. And people say, yes, yes, and nod. He gets a jug of sand and he pours sand on the top and shakes it down and pours more sand and shakes it down, showing that you can get even more in. And then he does the same again and says, so now you think it's full. And everybody thinks, crikey, yeah, it's got to be full now. Nod their heads. And then he grabs a jug of water and tips some water in as well, making the point that when you start with the big rocks and you go about things the right way, you can actually accomplish and get a hell of a lot more in than you could by doing it in your old paradigm, your old way of thinking. So it's an incredibly powerful and valuable exercise. So what's the learning that we get from that? I'll go through these quickly and then I'll ask you if anyone wants to make any comments. In which case I can turn your microphone on, or you can put it into the chat window and I'll read it out. So what do we learn? We learn that if you use your time in the same way that the lady put the big rocks into the jar first, think of the jar as being a week, your 7 days, and you schedule into your week with your Google Calendar or Outlook Calendar or whatever tool you use, you schedule in the big rocks first. So your health and fitness, your family, time with your family, quality time with your family. In your working time, you would put in your important customers, building relationships with your customers, with your suppliers, with your staff, planning and organizing, all those sort of things that are very, very important, responding to tenders, getting work. And then you've got room for the smaller stuff to fit in. So that's how to go about creating what we call a time picture. So do it on a weekly basis or a fortnightly basis. Take a period of time and block in your calendar before all the small stuff gets in there. Block in the most important things that you've got to do for your business, the highest payoff activities for your business. I do that. I block out certain times during the week when I'm going to go to the gym or do my bike riding. I've got to keep fit. I'm no use to anybody else if I'm not fit and well. So it's a high priority for me. Time with my wife, quality time. She's got a full-time career and works full-time as well, so we schedule time in when we're going to do things together. We schedule time when we're going to have stuff on our own or with our own mates and stuff, and when we schedule our business stuff in. So think of it as a time picture and plan your time that way. Summarizing the learning from the big rocks, as I say, raise your hand if you want to make a comment, and when I've finished going through them, I'll turn your microphone on. If you work on the big things first, then you will have time to do most of the little things as well, rather than the other way around. If you don't get to the little things, well, they're only little things anyway. They're not so important. You know, there's reasons why we do them and we get stuck on doing them. I'll come to that. Big rocks are usually relationship-based. They're the proactive things. And quite often it involves other people and working on relationships. Shift to a paradigm of deciding what your whole life is about. Relationship rather than schedule. So it's not about, you know, fitting all those little things in. It's about working on the big things for your whole life. So when you're setting your goals and your vision, I told you in the week when we did vision, purpose and goal setting and strategies, to do the same thing for your personal life as you do for your business. You know, set your vision for your life, where you want to be in 5 years' time, 3 years' time, a year, what you've got to do in 90 days' time. So everything that we're going through applies to personal life as well as business life. Your business should just be a vehicle to achieve your personal goals. My philosophy. Philosophical basis to decide what are all of the big rocks. So again, it's a mindset thing. And you decide what are your big rocks. Don't let other people decide and tell you what your big rocks are. Organize your whole life around relationships. So a lot of this is Stephen Covey stuff. It's stuff that I believe in as well. If you want to read more about it, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a great book, or First Things First is another great book, or just find some Stephen Covey videos on YouTube. So that's the big rocks principle. Now let's take it a stage further, and this also comes from Stephen Covey, but again, it's covered by a lot of other people and a lot of other publications as well. First of all, before I do that, anybody got any questions? Type a chat message in or raise your hand and I'll open your mic. If not, I'll take this opportunity to have a drink of water. Okay, so the next philosophy or thought process to go through is the quadrant system. As I say, it does appear in Stephen Covey's books as well as the big rocks, but it also appears in a lot of other publications as well. So you draw 2 axes, importance and urgency, and then you put things into these quadrants. So I've got a client in my other mentoring group who has a whiteboard, and he's divided up into quadrants, and he puts things into the relative quadrants, things that have got to be done, so that you can see which are the important ones and the ones you should be working on. Now, all of us will have some things that are important and urgent. These are things like a crisis, you know, something breaks down, somebody gets sick, something goes wrong, something outside of our control quite often. It becomes a pressing problem, something that presses on us and forces us to take action there and then. Deadlines, when you're running up against a deadline for a project, meetings, preparations, tenders, all those sort of things. You know, they're urgent and probably they're important as well. So again, they're things you can't ignore. These are things that press on you. You've just got to do them. And we call things that go into that quadrant, we call that quadrant rather the crisis quadrant, because things that go in there are generally a crisis and can't be ignored. Then below that, we've got quadrant 3, which is it's not important but urgent, but rather than saying it's urgent, it appears to be urgent. So it gives the perception of being urgent. So interruptions like emails popping up saying, read me, some phone calls, the phone ringing, mail getting dropped on your desk, some reports, some meetings, all these things appear to be urgent. People dropping into your office or dropping in unexpectedly, things like that, can appear to be urgent because they seem to demand our immediate attention. But very often, 80% or more of those things are not important and shouldn't be dealt with at that time. Set time aside to deal with some of those things because they're not important. We call that quadrant the quadrant of deception, because you're deceived into thinking these things have to be dealt with now, that the mobile phone has to be answered all the time, that emails have to be responded to all the time, that people have to be allowed to interrupt you all the time. I just can't close my door. I can't turn my phone off. I can't turn my emails off. You're going to die if you get into that state of thinking. So it's the quadrant of deception. And then we've got quadrant 4. This is stuff that's not urgent and it's not important either. So this is trivia, sometimes called busy work. People get busy doing stuff, not really thinking about what it is they're doing or what's important or if it's important. So again, some phone calls, some time wasters, surfing the internet, reading the newspaper, just doing all these things. We get a whole lot of stuff which is just not important or not urgent. It says excessive TV there. I mean, there's all this stuff. You can think of lots and lots of things. We call this quadrant the escape quadrant because it's the quadrant that people go to when they spend too much time in crisis. You know, you've been dealing with a crisis or crises over a period of time. You need some escape. You need to go and surf. You need to read or watch, find out what's happening in the cricket and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with that if you do need a break from the crisis. The thing is, try to get out of spending time in crisis. Finally, we have quadrant 2. This is important stuff, but it's not urgent. And this is called the success quadrant, because this is where we need to be spending time on things like planning, building relationships, getting clear on our values, living by our values, getting into prevention and maintenance rather than crisis and breakdowns and fixing things, doing preparation. You know, prior preparation and planning prevents pretty poor performance, all those sort of things. And the thing with this quadrant is that most of the things that go in there will be big rocks that we've just talked about, and they will also be proactive things. In other words, you have to proactively schedule the time, make the time, and work on them. They're not going to press on you and demand that you work on them now. And that's why they're so easy not to do, because it's not pressing to do it now. So it's easy to put it off and leave it. And then, of course, it becomes a crisis, because now you've got a deadline, you're not prepared, you haven't done the planning, things go wrong, you run out of time, you're now back into quadrant 1 in crisis mode. So a good percentage of your time, probably something like 20% of your time, should be spent on quadrant 1 activities, because the more time you spend there, the less time you're going to need to spend in the crisis mode. So your adrenaline level is going to go down, your serotonin levels are going to go up, you're going to feel better, you're going to be less stressed, you're going to be less depressed, all those sort of things by spending more time in quadrant 2 and less time in quadrant 3. It's inevitable that things out of our control are going to happen and you're going to have to get into quadrant 1 at some time, but minimize that time. So people say, well, how do I minimize the time? Let's have a look at some of the things that you can do. You know, gain time from escape and deception quadrants. So put some of those nice things off till the evening or when it's not your normal best working time of the day, and do it later. It's escape time, it's rejuvenation time. Maybe no, that's a high payoff, that's quadrant 2. But it's time that you can use outside of normal business time. So gain that time and spend that time doing proactive stuff in Quadrant 2, which is what it says there, used to gain time in the Success Quadrant. The Success Quadrant is mostly proactive stuff. It's your big rocks. It's things that need to be put into your calendar first. The Crisis Quadrant tasks are reactive things, so they press on you. You have to do them. And a lot of people live their whole lives in that quadrant, both their personal lives and their business lives. It's very, very sad because they get burned out. They get depressed. They may even get suicidal in extreme cases because they're running on adrenaline all the time. But that's the point. They get hooked on adrenaline. It's a drug, and they can't give it up. And it means they don't have to stop and think, because what they have to do next is already pressing on them. So try and avoid getting hooked on that drug. And the more time you spend in success, then the less time you're going to spend in the crisis quadrant. So again, raise your hand if you've got any comments or thoughts or want to ask any questions on that. I'll give you a few seconds to raise your hand or type something in the chat box while I have another drink of cold water. Gee, you're a very quiet bunch. Okay, so the third philosophy. Now this comes from an international coaching program, and it comes from a guy called Tony Bongiorno, a very successful financial planning guy who built his business, got cancer, almost died from, I think it was brain cancer, went through amazing trauma, but bounced back from all of that and built his business up and sold it. And then years later started up another business. He just couldn't help himself. But he got this coaching from a guy in Toronto with a whole bunch of other guys. And this is their philosophy on getting things done and how you spend your time. And my belief is that if you marry these things, three things together, or pick the best bits out of all of them and apply them, then you'll get a heck of a lot more done in less time with less stress. So let's have a look at the program. It's called the Strategic Coach Program. And you can Google it. The guy is still putting out stuff on the internet. So the ground rules for this time system, everything comes down to systems, was to divide your time up into 3 types of days. So when you're planning and working on that time picture in your calendar, think of your time in 3 different ways. Think of work-free days. Now, the guys in the Strategic Coach Program believed this was the most important time period, because it's time when you rejuvenate, when you have creative ideas, when things come to mind. It's time when you work on your health, sharpen the saw, basically, in Stephen Covey terms. You know, apparently Abraham Lincoln said, if I was asked to chop down a tree and it was going to take 6 hours, I'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening the saw. You know, it's that kind of philosophy, working on yourself and getting yourself into better shape. The next type of days are focus days. These are days when you focus on the high payoff activities, is my language. Unique abilities is the strategic coach language. The things that give you the greatest return for your time in your business. So again, the things that give you the greatest return for the amount of time that you put into the business, your big rocks. In other words, this is time when you work on your big rocks. And then the other kind of days they schedule are buffer days. And buffer days, I'll explain them all in a bit more detail. But think about it as putting those blocks of time into your calendar. So free days is a 24-hour period from midnight to midnight. During the 24 hours free time, you are not focused. You do not do focused thinking or reading to do with your business. You don't discuss activities relating to business. You don't take phone calls, answer emails, or answer voice messages. It's completely 24 hours for you. Time to spend with the family, time to go to school concerts, kids' sports days, all those sort of things. Time to go for a bike ride, work on yourself. You do not communicate whatsoever with the office. So that's a free day. That's a challenge. In my other group, at the beginning of the year, we set goals for the number of work-free days we're going to have during the year. And that came out of the strategic coach as well. That's the first thing they do, is they look at the next 12 months and they block out their work-free days. And every year they try to increase the number of work-free days they're having, because they're trying to work themselves so that they don't have to, out of the business, so they don't have to be in the business. So that's their most important days. Focus days. I apologize for the quality of the presentation, by the way, but it's one that I'm using under permission from Tony Bongiorno. So a focus day, again, it's a 24-hour period. It could be 80% of a normal working day. And it's the time that you devote to the 3 activities that will cause the greatest productivity for the overall organization. So the things that will give you the greatest return. I asked you all in the group to go away and think about what your high payoff activities are. What are the things that you spend time on that give you the greatest return in your business? Now, I know that some of you are pretty small businesses or on your own. That means there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to get done. So we'll come to that in a little while. And with focus days, it's best to plan 2 or 3 weeks in advance. So again, know what your 5-year vision is, know what your 3-year vision is, have a 12-month plan of what you want to achieve in the next 12 months. We've set that up in the group, so you should have a plan by now of where you want to be at in your business by the end of 2015. And then break it down into 90 days. Is typically recognized as the best planning period. What am I going to do in this quarter? Set yourself some goals, work on those, and then break it down into smaller chunks. 2 or 3 weeks, a few days, today. What am I going to do? What things are going to give me the biggest return? Again, it comes down to planning, but you've got to invest that time in Quadrant 2 in the planning and preparation, doing this stuff. At the end of each 90-day period, review the 3 focus day activities and see if they need to change. Revise, redefine, set your next 90-day goals, make sure it aligns with your 12-month goals, and so on. So we've been through the goal setting bit a fair bit. And then buffer days. I actually like buffer days. It's the day, again, 24-hour period, but it's when you clean up things, or you work on yourself. You might do some training courses. You might check out some new technologies, get some new knowledge about stuff, tidy up the filing system, clear up all the paper and clutter off your desk if there is any. So it's cleaning up messes, delegating non-productive stuff, or finding ways that you can get somebody else to do things. We've talked a little bit about it. We will talk about it in a later workshop about outsourcing stuff and getting stuff done that you shouldn't be spending your time on. I love it when I can get something done overnight while I'm asleep and wake up and it's there for me in the morning, and I do it, and I'm starting to do it more and more because it frees up my time to work on the important stuff. But researching some of that stuff comes into the buffer days. Setting up strategic alliances, working out all those things comes into buffer days. I like buffer days. I like all of them, actually, come to think of it. In the Strategic Coach program that this came from, they talk about people's unique abilities. Now, we've had some good discussion and we've done some good exercises on personality, and we've looked at the different 5 pillars of a great business, and we've talked about how different personalities enjoy doing different elements of a business. You need all elements to be done and done well to have a very successful and growing business and profitable business. But typically we are only good at doing 1 or 2 of those things, and there are things that we do better than anything else. So how do you identify your unique abilities? Well, look at the 4 rings of lifetime activity. There are things that we do that we're incompetent at, so we shouldn't be doing them. And it doesn't matter how long we work at it, doesn't matter how much we get people to help us and show us, doesn't matter how much training we get, we're just never going to be competent at it for whatever reason. More than likely because we just don't like doing it and we're not no interest in doing it. There are things that we're competent at. So bookkeeping, I'm competent at bookkeeping, but is it something I should be doing? No, not really. Now with the help of the cloud and a good bookkeeper externally and things, I spend very little time doing that stuff. But I'm competent at it. I can do it. But there are things that, you know, I'm never going to be good at. I'm never going to be excellent at, which is the next category. There are things that we are excellent at, and these are activities where your performance is way above normal. All right, so you're really, really good, and people tell you, gee, you're really good at doing that. And it meets really high standards, so it's good quality stuff as well. In the Strategic Coach program, they say we see excellent as something that you do extraordinarily well, but it does not give you energy to do it. So it's, you know, we've all got these, call them talents or skills that we've either adopted or learned, and we do them really, really well, and we're excellent, and people tell us that, and it's all good quality stuff, but do we really enjoy it? I can think of several things that fit into that category for me. I'm excellent at it, but there are things that I would prefer to be doing. So I wouldn't want to be doing it, and I don't do it all the time. So again, make up these 4 lists. You've all got the sheet now that I gave you to fill this in. Write down the things that you do in your business that fit into these different categories. It's just a great learning exercise for yourself and a clarity exercise. Remember, clarity leads to power. And finally, unique abilities. So what are they? According to the Strategic Coach guys, activities where your performance is excellent, like the last category, but you keep getting better. You just get better and better. There's no upper limits to how good you can get and how far you can go with it. And when you're doing your unique abilities, other people want to be around you. They just love being around you because it energizes them. And they just want to join in and be there. And it's where your happiness lies. You're happy doing it. You love doing it. You just can't wait to get up in the morning and start doing it. And when you're doing it, you're in the flow. You're in the zone. Everything just goes really, really well. Any comments or questions on any of that while I grab another drink of cold water? Okay, I'm going to ask you in a few minutes to type into the chat box and tell me something you've learned, something you're going to do differently, something you're going to put in place as a result of what we've covered in the workshop and in this webinar. So have a think about it now and start typing it into the chat menu, and then I'll read them out and I'll give you an opportunity to talk, ask questions, give feedback in a few moments as well. So let's look at it as the 4 circles. You know, around the outside here we've got incompetence. Stop doing them. You know, the arrows pointing in towards the middle. Find someone who's competent or excellent or whose unique ability, better still, their unique ability is those things, and outsource it, delegate it. The same with competent. It's not the best use of your time. And again, some of these things will take time to outsource. It'll take a big mind shift on your part, and particularly with the excellent things. Yeah, do some if you like. Do some if you can't find anyone else to do them as well as you, but don't think that there's, never ever think there's no one out there who can't do things as well as you, because that's just not the case. That's just an ego thing. And focus on the center of the circle, your unique abilities. So really, really give it some thought based on what was in that other slide and what's on those documents that you've got from the group on Trello. What are your unique abilities? What are the things that fit that category? And start slowly working your way through using time pictures, big rocks and the quadrants, everything we've learned so far, to spend more time on those things in the center of the circle. So the message is focus on your unique abilities, or call them high payoff activities, whatever you want. I'll go with the strategic coach thing because these are things that are unique to you. And master the art of delegation. I keep blogging and talking to people and putting stuff up on social media about the biggest reasons that business owners don't create a good growing business or don't create a business that they can sell is because they don't delegate. The two biggest impediments to businesses being a good business are the owner not delegating and not having good systems in place. Systems and delegation. There are ways. There are people out there that you can outsource and delegate things to. We'll talk about it down the track. The other thing is you will not progress without measurement. Measure what you do. Measure your marketing, measure your sales, measure your time spent, measure the most important things. We'll talk about the numbers in your business in a later session, a later workshop, and really get clear on what the important measures are in your business and set it up. For anyone who wants to have a real learning about where their time goes, track your time. Either set up a spreadsheet with timelines on it and write down what you're doing at different times during the day. Or you can use an app. There is an app for everything these days, and it's called toggle.com. That's TOGGL.com. So Tango, Oscar, Golf, Lima.com. And you can put that on your smartphones, tablets, or your computer. You can set it up with all the things that you do in your business, how you spend your time. It's great if you charge out for your time, by the way. You can put a value on your time in there, and during the day when you're doing stuff you can set it going. Working on this right now, I'm working on that right now, and then it will give you reports at the end of the day, end of the week, or whenever you want, about where your time went. It's a real eye-opener. See how much of your time gets spent on the high payoff activities, the big rocks. See what gets spent elsewhere. So find some tools. There's others as well. If you come up with any good ones, let me know. Put it up on Trello, put it up on the group. And again, as I said at the beginning, going back to what I said to start with, it's all about mindset, attitude, about how you invest your time and what you spend your time doing. And a lot of what we do comes from habits of thought or habits of activity. So you need to change some habits. So what I'd like to do now is tell me anything that you're going to work on that you think were great ideas. I've got here schedule the focus and buffer days instead of being reactive. That's fantastic. You'll be amazed how much more productive you become just doing those things. Yep, and say it's all about habits. It takes typically 31 days of a new habit to shift out an old habit. So don't expect it's going to be easy or that it will happen quickly. So look at the habits that are holding you back, do less of them. Look at the habits that are working well for you and do more of them.